talking about SNL, the history, the mysteries, and all the hot impressions in between, breaking down all the numbers as well. In your favorite sketches with special guests, it's on the Saturday Night Network.
Yes, so welcome on in, everybody, to the Saturday Night Network for another edition of our SNL Roundtable, coming to you after the Shane Gillis and Tate McRae episode of Saturday Night Live. My name is John from the SNN. So happy to be with you on this Monday night to break down everything from this fascinating episode of Saturday Night Live. We all knew that the episode after the 50th might be a little bit weird, so I'm excited to talk through it all and talk about the moments that we're going to remember from season 50, episode 13. We are, of course, here as a presentation of LateNighter.com and with some amazing panelists in the house and also a great live chat that always joins us on these Monday nights. So first up, let me bring in my brother from another mother. That is Andrew Haskell. Haskell, how are you?
I'm doing good. I think, we were just in the little backstage getting ready, and I think it might have been a little low energy. We were all feeling real Monday, but once that new theme song hits, man, it gets me going. That's awesome. I'm excited to talk about this episode.
Yeah, see, some people don't love the themes. I get the feedback every now and then, or somebody leaves a review. It's like, they love the SNN, take away the themes, but it gets you pumped up. So that's
this one's a winner, man.
Thank you. I love it. Joining us as well as the incredible Amanda Barkin. Amanda, how are you?
I am good. I think that I am the culprit in what Haskell was talking about. It is feeling like a Monday, but I also do feel a little bit pumped up from the theme song. So love it or hate it, it makes you feel more than you were feeling before it played. So happy to be here now.
That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for some excitement, some high energy to talk about this episode. And joining us as well is the great Gabby Forbes-Bennett. Gabby, how are you?
I feel super pumped after that theme song, ready to talk about SNL. And yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited to talk about this and sort of get back into the flow of regular SNL. Obviously, the 50th was going to be this major celebration, but it's been a weird season because of the 50th, where we have sort of this month off, where we didn't have any SNL episodes in February, then a couple weeks until this one in March. So it really has been a long time since SNL has been on for a regular episode, plus all the election stuff in the fall. So this is definitely one of the more unusual seasons in its history. And SNL had a interesting decision to make with how they're going to open up the post 50th portion of the season, and they decide to book Shane Gillis, who has a very long history with Saturday Night Live. So we're going to talk about his history with the show and him coming back to host for the second time. Before we get there, something we tried out in the fall a little bit was talking about the cold opens first. And I do think that this is another week that would be appropriate because, again, for the first time in a while, we get a cold open that is a little bit monoculture. Something has occurred that a lot of people are talking about. You don't have to be so into politics to be able to understand what they're talking about here, where the day before the episode, there was this scene that occurred at the White House where Zelensky was meeting with Trump and Vance. And, I guess you could call it an argument broke out that the video ended up being pretty viral as something that you don't usually see. Usually you see politicians that are really, well put together in front of the cameras. But there was, press, foreign press, all there in the Oval Office watching Zelensky argue with Trump and Vance. And it was just fascinating to watch no matter what side of the aisle you fall on. So the natural inclination from our perspective is that SNL has to cover this. And if they didn't, why wouldn't they? Why are we at the point in their history where they're not going to tackle this? So they decide to go ahead with it. A major point in this is that, in the real scene, we don't see Elon Musk. In the fake scene we get from SNL, we get Mike Myers appearing, coming off of his role as Linda Richman from the 50th, where he comes in here to play Elon Musk. And that is certainly a major storyline from the cold open. So let's tackle all of the things we saw to open up the show this week. Did SNL do a good job with this? Haskell, I will start with you.
Yeah, and I think this is where you said this is one of those situations where SNL has to comment on it. And this is why you play things smart this time around with your use of the cold opens. Be a little bit more strategic in the way that you're using Trump in these cold opens, because when you get to these moments where you're like, SNL has to touch upon that, then we're not burnt out on the Trump character. Now, it also plays to their advantage that we haven't had an episode in a month. So we're not burnt out on those types of cold opens. So it gave them a little bit more leeway with this character. And I think SNL finally got a little bit of an advantage. We're so used to things happening like throughout the week and with social media, late night shows, all that sort of stuff. By the time SNL gets to it, a lot of meat is off the bone. This happened later in the week, so SNL did get the chance to be one of the first to comment on it. As for the sketch itself, I thought that Marco Rubio, Marcelo playing Marco Rubio was the highlight for me, because that just like was so true to that situation. If you watch the real video, Marco Rubio does not want to be there. He is like glued to that couch, staring, disassociating. Like, so that was a funny bit for me. I've said it all season, and I don't know if James Austin Johnson is trying to hook on to some sort of impression that is something new that Trump is doing, maybe as Trump gets a little bit older. But I think something has really fallen off on his Trump impression. There are times where he does not sound like Trump at all. And from a technical standpoint in a sketch, I'd kind of like to see him get a little bit better at that. But let's be honest, the main point of this cold open is Michael Myers coming back as, or Mike Myers, I should say, not the serial killer. Mike Myers coming back playing Elon Musk. Clearly, there was a little bit of, and you could see in the in the good nights.
You say so formal of you to call him Michael.
But he, there's a little bit there. They're trying to needle there, and that's okay in comedy sometimes. They're laying into the whole President Musk thing. Looks like they're trying to get under some people's skin, which I think works sometimes. His impression was not particularly great, but I don't think it mattered in that situation. Like, he's trying to play Elon Musk, the character. And I thought it worked out pretty well. In terms of cold opens, I think at the end of the day, this will just be a cold open that maybe we look back in time and we'll go like, oh yeah, that happened. I don't think it's an all-timer cold open, but it worked for this week.
Yeah, to your point about Mike coming in as Elon Musk, we get this from him when he walks into the Oval Office.
Donald, what are you doing in my office?
As we start to see what the impression will be from him versus what we saw from Dana Carvey earlier in the season and Mikey Day a couple of seasons ago. Amanda, your overall thoughts on the cold open that we saw this week?
Oh, man. I think it's funny that you say that this is not usually how politicians behave, or not usually what we see. What really struck me is how these situations kind of just write themselves. I don't think the writers have to do a ton of work when these videos go viral the day before. Like, I think the interaction with Zelensky was pretty much bar for bar, except for the Willy Wonka reference from Bowen as JD Vance, which was my favorite part. I don't know why. I think because Bowen kind of broke a little bit, and it's not like it's not a good impression on Bowen's part at all, but I don't even know that it's trying to be. Like, I'd be curious to know how Bowen got this role and like what the conversations backstage are about that, about keeping him on. I mean, at this point he's JD Vance, but what, for the next 4 years is he going to do this impression? I don't really know. I think that Mike Myers kind of saved this for me because Musk wasn't in the real scene, and I thought that honestly, this was a pretty good impression. In part because, I mean, Elon Musk he's very weird. He's different every time we kind of see him. So for it to be kind of erratic and all over the place does not a bad impression of him make, I guess. I wish that he had made a reference to Dana Carvey playing him earlier. Like, I just think that would have been funny and meta, and I don't really understand why they didn't do that. But yeah, I mean, it was just we knew it was coming, I guess. To Haskell's point, I agree that something feels off about JJ's Trump impression. I don't know if it's because Trump is now the president again, so it's like a little bit different. And I think that Trump, to me at least, in like the last few videos or press conferences, has seemed like a little bit more, like a little meaner. And JJ's Trump is not that. He doesn't have that edge to him. He's kind of just like bumbling. And so I don't really know. And I'd just be curious, how long are we going to keep this up for? Like, are we going to really have 10 years of Trump cold opens? I don't know, but we did last weekend. So,
well, you hit on a few things that I think are interesting. Number one is that, is it possible that they had Mike already playing Elon Musk in the cold open prior to this scene breaking out at the White House, and then they just tried to fit Mike as Elon into this new cold open? So that's something, I don't know what the cold open was before, but given that Andrew Dismukes also comes in as, the guy who's, sort of survived the purge and is creating committees, like maybe that was the original concept for the cold open. So they ended up merging these two things together, which sort of, takes the scene out of just being a full transcript of what happened. Bowen Yang, I think, is also interesting here because I think that, as I mentioned, I think Bowen's impression of Vance at the beginning of the season gave me absolutely nothing. It was like, kind of smirky that he was playing him, but beyond that, like he didn't do anything with the impression. And that's not necessarily Bowen's fault. He's not a political writer, but I just don't think that we got any SNL version of an impression here. And at least with this scene, we were forced into Bowen doing something with the character.
Excuse me? I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, I have to jump in here because that's how we planned this. What happened to thank you, okay?
And I think at one point, James is Trump says like he's very macho. So like, I think the idea here is that they're really trying to break Vance down. And I think that is a great path to go if this ends up being more of a recurring spot to putting him in. So that to me was a huge positive from the cold open. Gabby, what did you think of the cold open overall?
Yeah, I kind of got the impression, like you said, John, that they may have planned for Mike Myers to come in as Elon initially, and then, a spanner like was thrown into the works with this whole meeting on Friday. And so it felt like maybe they rewrote the whole sketch to describe this event and that the Elon thing was kind of shoehorned in. It kind of felt like a mix match or mishmash of like the two things combining. But that's, I don't know, that's just my impression because I feel like it seemed that having Mike Myers come in and act as Elon Musk, maybe they could have done more had they had more time to, explore it a little bit more. And maybe we'll see that in the future, not sure. But about like Bowen's impression of Vance, I actually really enjoyed it. I guess I'm in the minority right now, but I just found it to be, obviously it's not supposed to be like the actual person, but I think that in the sketch, it was very like cohesive, the way that it was so over the top and so camp. And to tie it out with the Real Housewives audition in the end, I thought that was kind of like a way of explaining this is why Bowen is acting like this. And I thought that it was pretty fun that way. And just overall, I thought that it was like pretty funny. I didn't have anything that like jumped out at me that was so like, I don't know. I like the Marco Rubio. I do wish that they could have done a little bit more with that, but overall I thought it was like fine.
Go ahead, Haskell.
Yeah, can I just make one more point about these cold opens? Because you guys brought up some good points about trying to blend maybe what the cold open was, and maybe it was heavily Elon inspired, and then this happens. I think one of the things that was a problem when whenever we get these situations where people are like, oh, it just writes itself, I think that's the worst possible thing for comedy and the worst possible thing for SNL, because we see when they get lazy and we're just like, this is what happened. I'd like to see some of these cold opens comment on, this was a big event. We all admit that they had to do something with it. But I don't know if we always need them to be like, look, this is what happened. Everybody's sitting in the exact same seat as they were, and we're just going to recreate this video that you saw and throw some jokes in there. I think this cold open, if they wanted it to be Elon focused, could have been like, okay, that disaster meeting that we just saw on the news, now that meeting just ended, and now they're checking in with Elon, and you can still make the same jokes about Elon being in charge. You can make a lot of the same jokes about how they reacted to things, but it doesn't have to necessarily be like a side-by-side play of, this is exactly what everybody saw, we're just going to throw in some SNL jokes.
And I think you're right. I think that, something I do like that SNL did in the first Trump administration with Alec that ends up getting completely washed away because people got so tired of the impression and the, rolling list of celebrities that were coming in, was that they would often make up things that didn't happen but could have, in order to facilitate the comedy. So in the situation here, we could have gotten a scene after Zelensky leaves the White House and see what Trump and Vance said to each other in the fictional SNL world. We also could have gotten the scene before he came and saw them preparing to ambush him and create a whole scene around that. There are other elements and things that you can do without just completely replaying the scene. But I am grateful that they did do a scene and it wasn't just simply, Trump commenting on this just straight to camera. And that's the interesting thing. I know you guys were saying that you feel like something is off with James's impression. That's definitely been a recurring thing that analysts have said all season on the podcast. I haven't necessarily seen that myself, but I do think, Amanda, you had a really astute point that perhaps that Trump, now that he's no longer running for election anymore, he can now sort of be his like fully angry self at times and sort of be that asshole that he needs to be in business to succeed, or whatever you want to call it. So, that was what we saw a little bit, in this meeting. And James, who is a brilliant impressionist, is more of a reserved person. And I think that it's a shared quality between a lot of great impressionists, is that they sort of come out through their characters. And I do wonder if it's a little bit more difficult for him to play somebody truly mean versus just going on these really funny rants that we saw from him for many years now. So is that how you're feeling about it, Amanda?
Maybe, or they just haven't adapted it yet. Or, I mean, he's playing a character, like, it's a caricature and it's not necessarily evolving with Trump. Like we said, Trump is now 3.5 years older than he was when this impression was born, and things have changed and a lot has changed, like the climate and Trump's position. But I don't know. There's like a little bit of, I don't know. I think that's really interesting, though, the thought of like them preparing for it. That's a really good idea. I feel like you should submit that. That really clicked with me. Like they clearly prepared it and they like did the whole good cop, bad cop. And they made a joke about how Vance was going to interject and like demand, gratitude. They totally should have done. We should have seen that meeting, and that would have been a fresh take. I think that because these things are so ridiculous that they literally don't elevate it when they recreate it sometimes. And that's just kind of like, oh, look how funny it is, or how bleak things are, because these, viral clips are basically just repackaged SNL sketches or vice versa. So maybe if you want Trump to be, if JJ wants to do Trump as like this like kind of whimsical, scatterbrained version of himself, then it needs to be like kind of him when he's not in front of the camera. Or obviously he's in front of like the Saturday Night Live camera, but he's not in front of the news. Like it's like that would be really interesting to me. Like what is Trump like when the cameras are not on?
As a modern example of something that I really think that they did well is if you go back to the Gerard Carmichael episode a few years ago, when Will Smith and Chris Rock had the slap situation from the Oscars, they had this environment of seat fillers coming in, and not, one of them leaves to go to the bathroom when Chris Redd was playing Will Smith, and then he walks up to go slap him, and then the guy is like really excited to take a selfie with Will Smith, but doesn't know that he just slapped Chris Rock. And like that whole scene I thought was really well done. Like you still were able to cover the slap, and you had the perspective of other people in the scene that you didn't already think about. So again, I do think that SNL did a lot of good things here. I just think that they were missing some extra elements, so it didn't feel like a complete carbon copy of what we saw in real life. I'll again say big wins for Bowen. And again, seeing Mike Myers on Saturday Night Live to me is always a great plus. He's one of those guys that you would think would have come back so many times. Only hosted the show once, did do a few cameos over the years, but we really haven't seen him on an SNL episode in 10 years. It was the first time Ryan Gosling hosted the show, and by coincidence, he comes out and promotes Canada alongside Gosling. I think we got him as Dr. Evil a year earlier, but it's just been few and far between since 1995 and him leaving the show. So for me, always great seeing Mike at the show. Anyone else got anything on this cold open? All right, let's talk about Shane Gillis. So I don't want to do speaking of carbon copies, I don't want to do a whole redo of our conversation last year when he first was booked to host, where we sort of got into his firing, not hiring, whatever you want to call it. But, if you don't know, he was hired to be a cast member alongside Bowen and Chloe Fineman at the start of season 45. Clips came out about something he said on a podcast. You can find out all the information about that. And ultimately, SNL made the decision not to have him as a cast member. He then goes off. He has this amazing career, really prolific as a stand-up. People seem to really love him. And he is asked to host last year. It was a big deal because it is such a unique situation in SNL history. And I would say it was probably a mixed bag. A lot of SNL fans who were, pretty close and watch the show week to week didn't necessarily care for it. A lot of people who love Shane really love getting to see him in the SNL environment and felt like it was a big win for Shane. I probably fell somewhere in the middle, truth be told. But what I found was really interesting was with all the talk of who's going to play all these politicians coming into the 50th, word did come out shortly after the premiere that at some point in the summer, Shane Gillis was approached with playing Trump this season. And he did decline, and the impression stayed with James. So in an alternate universe, we are getting Shane coming back for episodes at the start of the season to play Trump. In the end, he ends up hosting. So I would love to know, and I'll start with you, Gabby, this time, on your thoughts on the decision of Saturday Night Live to bring Shane back after his first time last year.
Yeah, so I think, I don't know, my first thought was that SNL is maybe trying to get away from being perceived as like very left-leaning. Not that he's necessarily a right-leaning comic, but he, I feel, kind of toes the line a bit, at least just from what I understand. I was surprised at the decision to have him be the first host after the 50th special. I thought maybe they would do, I don't know, a callback, one of, I guess, a different frequent host who's maybe been around and affiliated with SNL for much longer. And
Gabby, can I just jump in with a quick theory? Sorry, I don't want to interrupt your thought, but just while you brought that up, I have a theory, just a speculation, that they really wanted Lady Gaga to host the episode after the 50th.
I thought the exact same thing.
And that she was there in the audience, and SNL always had this thing where they introduced the next host. And I bet you they were trying to schedule Lady Gaga for this week and perhaps Shane for this week coming up. And just the schedules didn't work and they flipped like that. I can't imagine that they wouldn't have done any promotion for Shane at the 50th had this been planned a long time in advance. So that's just my theory on this. Please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I thought that it was very likely that they wanted Lady Gaga because obviously very big name and her doing double duty for the show. But I did think that maybe there was a scheduling conflict or something. But yeah, that was my initial impression. I, like you, kind of fall in between. I haven't followed Shane's stand-up career or anything really that he's done professionally outside of SNL. So I was just looking to see how he would mesh with the cast this time around. I was also curious to see if Bowen would have any sketches with him, because I know that in the past, I don't know if he said it explicitly or if it was just speculation, that Bowen was, some of the controversy did relate to like Asian Americans. And so I think could have been a sensitivity there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I will say that Bowen has very much put the kibosh on it and said we're good, we spoke, we're okay. But yes, Bowen did not appear in any sketches with Shane. He did have a role that was cut from the midday news sketch where he was going to be in a sketch with Shane. And there was also a couple of Bowen sketches in Dress that got cut. So I would chalk it up more to coincidence this time, probably most so because Bowen had to fly out and go to the Oscars last night. So I think he probably got a little bit of a lighter night than he usually would have. And we may have had a higher percentage of seeing them together. But certainly it didn't help the conversation, the fact that they didn't appear together on Saturday night. But Amanda, I'll send it over to you. What do you think about Shane, his history with SNL, and him being booked for this episode?
I was just gonna to speak for Bowen. Bowen in his he had a New Yorker feature earlier in the fall, and he told this whole story. So he was hired with Shane, right? He was a writer before, and then him and Shane got hired, and then this controversy happened. And I think Bowen seemed to feel like a lot of people pinned it on him, and he just was kind of like, it was his first season on the show. Like not that he endorses any of, you know, the tweets or any of the podcast statements at issue, but that it really wasn't like Bowen's like crusade or like activism, that he just kind of wants to be like not involved, which I think is, I mean, especially for his first season, but there's, you know, there have been other hosts, I think, since then. I understand the theory that maybe it was supposed to be Gaga and then Shane, but even so, it really surprises me to bring Shane Gillis back 1 year later and have him be a host canon forever on the 50th season of Saturday Night Live. Really confuses me. And to be very clear, not because of, I'm totally happy to give him a chance. I don't feel like because he was fired or because he's done things in the past that he can't, you know, atone for them, or that I just don't think he's very good at hosting Saturday Night Live personally. I think that, I don't know if it's all him or that they feel kind of like backed into a corner, so they write the same type of material for him. They don't really give him a chance to stretch or show his chops. To me at least, he kind of plays the same, at least the same font, you know, a couple different characters. It doesn't really feel like, and it's cool that there's not really a cast member that's like Shane, so you kind of get different comedy, and I'm down for that type of comedy. I just don't think he's that good at it. He's perfectly fine, and I think he's charming at points and endearing at points, and I think I've seen some stand-up of his that I think is very funny. I didn't think his monologue was good. I didn't think it reflected some of his better stand-up. I just think it's a weird choice. When you have however many episodes left in the 50th season, you have to figure that there are other people ready and willing. We just saw a parade of, you know, the most famous and talented sketch comedy, you know, appearances in the world 2 weeks ago. And was Shane Gillis even at the 50th? I was thinking about that. John, did you see him?
I did not see him there, and I don't think he was there.
Right, like that's so. It's just, I don't know. I guess in some, it's a little bit of a buzzkill of an episode. And I think we've all said, you know, there was no way to sustain the momentum. I'm not, what? You want to? You look.
No, sorry.
Like
You cut out for a second and we got you at the end. You look like you're back.
Oh, sorry. I just am perplexed. But I was down. I was like, let's see, you know, maybe there was some reason, maybe he's got something they want to show, something cool, something the writer like, but that just didn't deliver for me. So even more perplexing in hindsight.
I think I got a little bit of insight into this through listening. I don't know if you all had a chance to listen to it yet or read yet, the Susan Morrison book on Lorne that just came out in the last couple of weeks. But it is a fascinating look at Lorne Michaels' life, and it's through, you know, sort of interluded with her being there to watch him completely run from start to finish the Jonah Hill episode from season 44 as it's going through Lorne's life. And I think that anytime I get a little bit of insight into Lorne Michaels, it always like paints a little bit of a bigger picture as to why some of the decisions that are made. And I do wonder, because if I look at the ratings from last season, just in terms of TV Nielsen ratings, and again, it's not the only thing that they look at now in season 50, but Shane's episode, 3.988 million viewers for live and same day. So that's 17th out of 20 shows. So it's not like he put up top ratings last year where they're like, oh, okay, it's one of the worst rated shows of TV. But maybe they do feel like the online presence, the demographic that really follows Shane will turn to the show. And to go back to my point about the book, one of the things I feel like I started to take away is I have a feeling that Lorne really likes different hosts in terms of fan bases. He doesn't always hit on different hosts in terms of, you know, the way that they look or who they are or their backgrounds. But as far as who supports them, I do feel like the people who really love Shane, without labeling them specifically, are not people that watch Saturday Night Live on a week-to-week basis. And I think that he feels like booking Shane brings people back into the show who wouldn't have normally watched the show. And that is probably the push to have him host. But Haskell, I'm very curious your opinion as a lifelong Saturday Night Live fan. Why do you feel Shane was brought back for this season for the second time?
Well, in terms of the controversies and stuff, we're never going to get the real answers until everybody's done with SNL. I don't think Bowen Yang's really going to give any real answers while he's at the show. And I'm not a big fan of looking at when there's controversy like that and looking at somebody like Bowen Yang and saying, you're Asian, so it's your job to tell me if I'm okay with this. Because it also becomes a thing. So Bowen Yang says it's okay. So now no other Asian people are allowed to be hurt by what was said, because the one Asian on the cast is allowed to.
He didn't say it was okay though, just to be clear.
No, I'm just saying, like, when you put it in the hands of one person, so it's like it's not going to be resolved right now. In terms of him coming back to host, in season 50, I think as fans, especially in this community, and we've built this amazing community of fans and all that sort of stuff, I think sometimes we can romanticize certain parts of SNL, and we look at it and we go, why is Shane Gillis hosting during the historic 50th season of SNL? Well, yeah, they also kicked off the historic 50th season of SNL with Gene Smart, who we can all love, doesn't really have a connection to the show. I remember 10 years ago, tons of speculation. Will Steve Martin host the finale of SNL 40? Or, will it be Chevy Chase? Will it be original cast member? And I'm pretty sure it was Louis C.K., who had a good career hosting as SNL, but did not have the strongest connection to the show. I think one of the reasons Shane Gillis was hosting, especially in this historic SNL 50, is I think they liked him as a host last year. And personally, controversy aside, I think Shane Gillis is a very, very talented sketch performer. He has a background in sketch performance. And Amanda, to your point, yeah, he might play a lot of similar roles. So does Tim Robinson, who is a phenomenal sketch performer, who has a phenomenal sketch show on Netflix. Bowen Yang also plays very similar roles more often than not, and he is a fantastic sketch performer. So at the end of the day, I think that's why Shane Gillis hosted. And I think he works, whether there is some division when he shows up, that I don't think that shows that much outside of us trying to count how many sketches Bowen Yang is in, because we've now done 2 Shane Gillis episodes, and they both have this real Shane Gillis flavor to them. And I really think that that's a sign to me that he goes into that writer's room on Tuesday night and he can work well with a lot of the writers. And of course, a lot of them come from the stand-up background, so there is that connection there. And I think it showed. I think he hosted because he is not a bad SNL host.
And
did you like his monologue? I'm just curious. If you guys liked his monologue. Sorry, I didn't.
I thought his monologue was okay. It was not his strongest stand-up. It was not the strongest monologue we've seen from a stand-up this season.
I was not a fan, but I'm not sure that I was necessarily the target audience for his monologue.
I hated his monologue as much as I've hated any monologue on SNL in a long time. I do think that he was much better suited for the sketches that we saw throughout the night. I just it was a complete whiplash to me, the room. And again, if he did that exact same set, like on Netflix in a theater, I may have thought it was great, but you needed to have some level of energy in the room. And it was as dead as the pre-show between the 4 of us. It was just it was not, the room had no air in it. And I was really just, I find it bizarre, truth be told, Amanda. But look, I do wonder if Saturday Night Live, and particularly Lorne and his producers, do feel like they would love to have somebody like Shane in the cast. They just haven't been able to find that person, just because he's so different than everyone else that's currently in the cast. So I'm not saying that they regret firing him, because maybe they still feel like that was the right decision at the time. But I still think 5 years later, they're on the search for a sketch performer that is very similar to Shane, and they haven't found that person. Maybe some other people on the cast can do like a couple things that are similar, but he is a pretty unique voice that's very similar to cast members of previous eras and not one of the modern SNL. So again, I think that is probably a reason that the show likes bringing him in, because he just fits a different role in a sketch that most of the performers can't. But let's dive into those sketches to talk about how he did do overall in his second time hosting. So Haskell, I'm going to send it over to you for the first sketch that we want to talk about.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with a couple of beers, and I've seen this sketch kind of blow up online this week. This sketch, I think, kind of shows what they're looking for in an audience when they bring in Shane Gillis. I'm a big, obviously, lifelong SNL fan, and I'm a big comedy nerd. But there's a lot of times with SNL that you can watch a sketch and you go like, ooh, if you're not into SNL, if you're not into sketch comedy, and I showed this to you, you're not going to like it. You're going to think it's weird. You're going to think it could be cringy. There's a lot of it. This is a sketch I think that I would show. I sent this to my friends that I know are not SNL fans. They're not sketch comedy fans. They're Barstool Sports guys. They're talking about what sports bets they have going. And they're that sort of guy, and I sent that to them, and it really spoke to them. I think SNL has a very, very strong track record, I think, with the kind of medication commercials and stuff like that. I think usually when they break those out, it plays really well, which I think this one did as well. My favorite thing of the sketch, though, is I thought the design of the actual beer was hilarious. The RX kind of bottle, the familiar orange with the white cap that I think anybody who's taken medication would be familiar with. I thought that was hilarious. It kind of reminded me of Rectix with the big kind of pill. Like, I thought that was a great design. And actually, when I watched the sketch and I saw him crack that open like that, I thought that was hilarious. And I just thought, like, there's so many like small breweries around America that are always coming up with like unique cans. I immediately thought, like, I wonder if anybody's ever tried that, because that's a really good bit. And then I just think the line for me was when he said, if you're afraid that you're ever gonna skip it or miss it, don't worry, you won't. You'll never forget to take a couple of beers. That was a great line. And I just think there was a lot of that Shane Gillis confidence in that sketch that played really, really well when they staged the intervention for him and they said, can you come here? And he just kind of pauses and smiles and goes, no. Like, that's the enjoyment. That's the character that Shane Gillis plays. And yes, he might play it across a couple different sketches, but I don't know if they quite have that guy in the cast. I think somebody like Dismukes or Longfellow could do something similar, but it would come off not the same way. So I thought rightfully so. If you look around, I don't know if it was what publication, but somebody posted a link to an article saying this is called the best sketch on SNL in 20 years. Now, I'm not crazy. I know a lot of the positive feedback from this sketch is coming from people who don't watch SNL, right? There is a bit of a conservative lean with this sketch, right? Like, dudes drinking beers, being bros, being guys, doing key bumps, like that. It's people who don't watch SNL being like, see, Shane Gillis, this is what SNL should be. And that's whatever, like, throw that to the side. It's still a very funny sketch.
Yeah, so I was definitely going to comment on that, Haskell, because I saw that all over X, and people were just like, best sketch in years. And like, I think, to go back to our point of why SNL wanted to book Shane, it's because you're going to get that type of response from his fan base and the people that love him when he does a good to very good, depending on how you feel about it, sketch, all of his work will be naturally boosted by the fans that are like, oh my gosh, SNL doing something funny, what? And like that's gonna happen in these situations. But yeah, no, I thought it was good because again, we don't do commercial parodies very often anymore, so it was really fun to get a spokesman promoting a commercial, and the commercial itself was so ridiculous because it's not like a commercial for a fake product. I think what was unique about this one is a commercial for a real product that's packaged as medication when it's not really medication. So I think that is hilarious because he is so in denial about his life, and probably a lot of people who watched it and liked it, that they have to say, okay, beer is my way that I medicate. So I think that there's a lot of really, really fun things they touched on here. Amanda, what were your thoughts on Couple of Beers?
I liked it. I think that during the sketch, it made me feel like maybe Shane Gillis is like Bill Burr's like cousin or like his like nephew in comedy. Like that's just what I thought of, because I was like, who else is like could be in this type of sketch? And I was kind of thinking about what we're saying, like, is that what they're doing? They're kind of trying to fill this role that's absent from the cast. But I was thinking, like, why is there not somebody like this on the cast? It's because I think that the SNL writing is typically a little bit different. And I think that I was kind of waiting for there to be a little bit more of a darker twist. Not necessarily because I think the sketch needed it, but because I think that a lot of the sketches this season have gone that way. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a good early.
You didn't feel like a little bump was the darker twist?
I don't know. I just thought there was going to be like a murder that he was like trying to cover up, because that's just been like kind of a recurring theme that I've enjoyed this season. Like, I like that. Maybe it's because there was no Longfellow in the sketch or in the night. So there was just no murderous vibes without Longfellow, but I liked it. I think maybe because of the Oscars that I haven't seen as much chatter. Like, I completely missed that online, that people were saying this is like the best sketch in 20 years. That's really funny. And I really want to watch it again with an eye for that. What?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like your demographic that would love the sketch or be like part of like your world that would fall in love with it, but it is still interesting. And what's funny to me is like I didn't even consider like, oh, should they have taken this any further? My just brain trying to adjust about like what they could have touched up here and there is like, I think they had a choice for this sketch to make it all from Shane's perspective of like him rooting his son on in baseball, him at work, him with the intervention with his parents, all of that. And would it have hit even harder if there was a bunch of other Shanes, like other bros who were also doing Couple of Beers, and they brought them into the sketch somehow? So then you got like your Michael Longfellow, for example, who's like, oh, like maybe he's the one that comes in with Lil Bump. He's like, oh, if you like Couple of Beers, you're going to absolutely love a Lil Bump. And I wonder if like adding in extra bros there may have hit harder. But Gabby, how did you feel about this pre-tape?
Yeah, I thought that it was like a little bit of the old school kind of SNL humor, like a fake prescription drug type ad. And I thought that the jokes were funny overall. And like I said, I don't follow, or I haven't followed Shane's career outside of what he's done on SNL in his appearances. And I just feel like I got from the sketch that this is kind of his element. He just seemed to fit, I guess, perfectly in this role. And it's for someone who, again, I thought it was funny. I didn't think it was the greatest sketch in the past 20 years, but I can see how, people could take that away. Because again, I just feel like it was kind of crafted around what I am assuming is kind of his brand and his humor, because I felt like, I don't know, his delivery of the lines is pretty good. He felt really like well integrated into the sketch overall. And so I can appreciate it for that. And I did like the twist of the intervention in the end, and then the kind of like zoom out or wide shot where you see that he's in his underwear the whole time. I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, I didn't necessarily think that it needed anything else. I think that it accomplished what it did very well, and that it kind of, I don't know, it's very shareable that's the vibe that I got as I was watching it, and I guess that is actually what has been happening. And so it is a way of reaching more of that audience.
Yeah, I totally agree. I do think that this reminds me, not in terms of subject matter, but in terms of the reaction to it, of the last time that Shane hosted, there was a cut Limu, Emu, and Doug sketch that ended up online. And I remember like the same, like, visceral reaction to, like, in a positive way to this sketch was also applied to that, whereas like, how did SNL cut the best sketch in 20 years? Like, I remember that happening last year. So I'm not surprised that this really works. And clearly, Shane, in a way that, Haskell brought up Tim Robinson, I do feel like Shane is really good with short pre-tape moments where he hits on his style of humor. And I could see in I Think You Should Leave style show for Shane, potentially down the road, for the people that do love getting to watch him. Amanda, I'm going to send it over to you for the next sketch you want us to cover.
Yes. I would like to talk about the Please Don't Destroy pre-tape called, what's it called?
The Sound.
The Sound, right. Not the voice, the sound, which was the first PDD, definitely of 2025. Also one of just not many PDDs this entire season. I loved it. The third PDD of the season. I really loved it, and I thought it was kind of a offbeat, or just a different than a lot of the PDDs we've seen of the past. The pacing felt different. Obviously, they weren't in the office. They had Ego as part of, one of them. I thought that this was like so funny, such a funny take on The Voice. Like, what if the judges could just like flip back, could change their mind and flip back, and then turns out just keep flipping back and forth. Like Shane won them back and then offended them again and then lost them and then won them back. And it was just really funny to me. I thought the pacing was a little inconsistent. Like, it just wasn't as quick and as quippy as some of the PDDs that we're used to, but I thought it was really funny. And then I really had a feeling that I really wanted Tate McRae to be in a sketch. I guess we haven't really talked about her yet, but I wanted to see her do a little bit more her second time at the show. And so that was really exciting. And I thought that was a really good ending on the sketch.
Yeah. And it's also interesting, like, there's two main really storylines that I think come out of this. One is, what is the future of Please Don't Destroy on Saturday Night Live? Because the stats clearly show that they've been put on way less than previous seasons. I guess the hype of PDD has died down a little bit. So is the change in style sort of cause or effect? Are they like, hey, we're going to do this proactively to sort of push us into this next level of PDD, that we're going to see more things like this? Or is it a reaction to maybe the office stuff is just growing stale and now we need to transition over to this? I think they did do one time a couple of years ago a sketch where they were sort of like foodies walking around New York and trying things that they were in character for. But this is really like one of the very rare times in the 30 PDDs we've seen make the show where they're not playing themselves and the style is really different. So the fact that they did decide to do this, to me, is very fascinating. From The Voice perspective, I think it's interesting that it's sort of like a little bit like, why now? I know when The Voice first premiered, I think there was a monologue where they once, I think maybe it was Adam Levine's monologue, where they once did stuff where different celebrity coaches came in to like coach how to do SNL with the chairs turning. And I think in Melissa McCarthy's episode, I'm going to say season 38, maybe, Melissa McCarthy played a really bad voice singer, and they did do something like this. But it has been a long time, going back, 12, 11 years since we've seen a real voice parody on the show. And the question is, why now? Is it something that was so unique that it really hit? So Gabby, I'd love to know your perspective on this PDD pre-tape, The Sound.
Yeah, I enjoyed it overall. I really liked Ego in this. I thought she was great. I did kind of find it funny. I was wondering why, The Voice is an NBC show. Why wouldn't they just call it The Voice and everything looks like The Voice, or like have a little twist or something at the end of it? But yeah, I enjoyed overall. The first time I watched it, I didn't like it as much, but on the second rewatch, I did, because I was able to pick up on a bunch of smaller details. Like, I love the Lord Farquaad-esque hair that they gave Shane for whatever reason with bangs. It's always great seeing a guy with a bang. And I loved when Ego's character was giving him a chance, or one of the few times when she was giving him a chance, as the chair's turning around and she asks, like, how old are you? And he says 14, and she just hits the buzzer again and just does a full 360. I thought that was really funny. And the little, the little bit of her driving away in her chair at the end, I thought that was pretty funny. And I also just wanted to point out, because I didn't pick it up on the first watch, but the song with Tate McRae is called Amazing Grace Otaku Style. And so I thought that was also a little like fun little detail that they added there.
There was a lot of good subtleties in this, including like the shirt that he was wearing. Tate McRae, I believe, was wearing like a jersey that had 69 on it. Like there was a lot of like really, I feel like they really put their best effort into it. And Gabby, I do wonder if the reason they go with the sound and not call this The Voice is that the guys weren't doing actual impressions of the voice judges. So then it gets a little bit confusing of like, okay, nobody's being Nick Jonas or Kelsey Ballerini or Adam Levine,
Sure.
whoever's there now. So I wonder if they just go full parody because of that. But it's definitely something as an NBC property, they would typically have the rights to be able to go after it. And even if it's on NBC, they've done it too. But it is just something interesting to think
get the promo out there. Get people watching The Voice again.
I kind of wanted to watch The Voice after I watched
There
this,
you go. It's
so-
working.
Yeah, I definitely do. I haven't watched The Voice probably since the first season, like in full. I've seen clips over the years, but everyone knows I'm a big Kelsey Ballerini fan. So now that she's a judge on there, I have been checking it out a little bit, and yeah, it's like it's still a very fun show. Haskell, what do you think of PDD The Sound?
You guys have me?
Yeah, I got you.
All right, sorry, I froze up a little bit here. I've said it for a long, long time now. I prefer Please Don't Destroy in their little office in their sandbox. I think I actually really enjoyed their skydiving sketch earlier this year, just because I feel like when they leave the office, they can get a little derivative. They can get a little like, okay, the sketch you referenced before, they wrote a sketch about how rich kids move to New York and then don't really understand New York or get to see the real New York. Like, and then in a situation like this, like, The Voice has been on for a long time. I feel like somewhere on the internet, there are people, there's a video, there's a sketch idea, there's a TikTok or a Vine where somebody made the joke of like, what if The Voice was so good, but when they turned around, the person was just so hideous or just such a bad person that they had to flip their chairs back or regret their decision. So I thought the setup to the sketch was not the most original, but there's a lot of small moments to like about this sketch. And it's a sketch that is enjoyed a little bit more on rewatch than it is right out of the gate when you're like, I don't know if this is the most original idea. And it does work a little bit on just that natural PDD pacing. I thought like the noise and the turning of the chairs and it was very rhythmic in the way that they were doing it. And that really made the sketch work.
Yeah, I also think it really hit on something that's very funny, which is that the whole point of the show originally is that every other music competition show will factor in looks and who the person is. So The Voice will always discover the best talent because we're going to ignore that. Yet Shane's character, Reggie T, pushes them so far to the limit that they decide to ignore him anyways. And then he ends up becoming this huge star alongside Tate McRae and sings Amazing Grace. So, for me, like, I do feel like a lot of these things were really good. It just was weird because this is the thing where it was a great idea for a pre-tape. It's almost as if PDD, who does write other sketches, could have written this sketch without them being in it, because there was no elements of anything familiar to their style that played in this sketch. And there could have been another pre-tape in the episode where all of the other people besides Ego in the chairs could have been other cast members, and the sketch still plays exactly the same, and we're still talking about whether we liked it or not, regardless. But the fact that it is a Please Don't Destroy It video to me is interesting, versus that other one, Haskell, that we're talking about, of them trying food in New York, which you couldn't see other cast members necessarily doing because it still sort of had the PDD rhythm to it, even if they were out of the office. So this one to me is a interesting question mark that I'll have until the next time we see them, of like, is this the next era for PDD? Are we going to start seeing them with other styles? So we'll have that conversation when we get there. All right, Gabby, I'm going to send it over to you for the next sketch you want us to cover.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about wedding interruption. I thought that I really enjoyed it overall. I was kind of expecting, with the premise of the coupons, Shane Gillis's character comes up with one, and then the husband has another one. I don't know. I thought that it had the chance of getting kind of like dull after a while, but I thought that they kind of did it in a creative way that kept me engaged and entertained. I think the highlight for me was Keenan's character as the officiant, pulling out his coupon that was the non-sexual open eyes foot rub. I don't know why, but the open eyes line on every one of their coupons just really tickled me. Like, I thought that was hilarious. I also find that, and I mean this as a compliment, that Sarah Sherman, like Sarah Squirm, because that's her handle, Sarah Sherman, I find that she can do a whining character very well. There's just something about it. It's not like grating at all to me, but the whole character just, say, oh my gosh, can we like go on with this? And I thought that it was pretty funny. And I also really appreciated, when we finally have that turning point in the sketch, when Devin's character just is on Shane's character's side, and he just goes, nothing, when he's like, yeah, we need to honor these coupons, which, I was kind of expecting, but I did appreciate the way that was delivered. And I really loved Ashley as well in that character. So yeah, I enjoyed it overall.
Yeah, Ashley was fantastic. We could definitely talk about her with some rapid fire of some of the things that she did in this evening. I felt like it was a big breakout night for her, as doing the little things really well. This sketch was hilarious to me. I wouldn't call myself a sexual coupon giver, but I've definitely given a non-sexual coupon in my day. And I thought that this was like a really hilarious escalation of the concept, especially with Shane kicking things off.
Valentine's Day 2020. I got you those Usher tickets and a gold necklace with matching bracelet. And in return, you gave me this coupon, good for one open eyes hand job to completion. Remember that?
Yeah. So very, very clear rules here on the coupon. And I think that there's a lot of things I really love that I said on Saturday. It could have gone off the rails very quickly, but at Haskell, I think the thing that I love the most about this sketch is that Shane Gillis's character does not actually care to break up this marriage. He doesn't still love her. He doesn't want to get back with her. He doesn't even want them to break up. He just wants the coupon to be redeemed, and then he's good to go. And I think they maintained that world throughout the entire sketch. And had they gone to the point where he's actually secretly trying to break them up, I think you lose me in this. But this was a really, really smart premise that they went with here. How did you feel about the wedding interruption sketch?
Yeah, just speaking of coupons, I've asked you multiple times, please stop mailing me coupons for free back rubs from Canada as payment for the podcast. I said I would do it for free. It's fine. No,
non-sexual.
Yeah, just platonic man
Between
back
bros.
rubs.
Open eyes.
Open eye
yeah.
back rub. No, but that's the key to it too, is like you said, like, yeah, that's a great point, that he's not trying to break up this marriage, which is really good. And that's what really opens up the floodgates to everybody else pulling out their coupons, because there is a version of this sketch where kind of everybody else is saying like there's a version of this sketch where he's saying like, you can't get married until you like do this coupon, and the game of the sketch becomes everybody being like, dude, we see through what you're doing. You're bringing this coupon to break up the marriage, and that's dumb. get out of here. But the fact that he's not trying to break up the marriage is exactly what kind of allows everybody else to go, wait a second. Yeah, I want my coupon redeemed too. And it makes for a much more fun game to play throughout the sketch. And that's what I really liked about it. And the open eyes part and the fact that a couple of the coupons have these kind of like, I don't know, like fine print to them. It's not just the specifics, or it's not just the broad action. It's the specific of like eyes open. That's what makes it really fun to me as well. I thought this was a fun kind of later in the night sketch.
Yeah, I really like this one. And if you sort of draw like a play chart of how this sketch works, essentially, think about all the characters here. You have Keenan as the officiant, you have Devin as the groom, Sarah as the bride, Ashley as the maid of honor, and Mikey as the father of the bride. And you can put them all together if you draw on a piece of paper circles of them all. They're a unit, and in comes the wild card with the coupon. And that's the beginning of the sketch. And at the end of the sketch, everyone has moved over to Shane's side and the bride is alone. And there's no, like, it's a clear, like, we're going to convince everyone to move over to that person. And I think that the writing is really clean in a way that some of the sketches we've seen over the last couple of years don't always get to. So I thought that this was really, really fun. Amanda, how did you feel about it?
I really like this sketch also. I feel like I immediately thought maybe it should have been earlier in the night. Like I was surprised that it was the penultimate sketch, if you will, because I thought it was also pretty clean. I think that you guys covered a lot, but hearing you talk about it, maybe what I liked about it was the Sarah aspect. And I think that I liked Shane Gillis's brand of comedy better with a little bit of Sarah squirm. Like to me, that kind of edge is kind of missing. I think that's just, I don't mean even
no
from
edge,
like
he said to completion. Did I? Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just going to keep going. I think that maybe I can't even make this point now. You've really just taken it in a different direction. I think that what Shane Gillis lacks for me, and maybe I've just identified this, is a little bit of the edge that I feel like I like from Sarah Squirm and Sarah Sherman, and kind of maybe also Michael Longfellow and Jane Wickline, which maybe we'll touch on. Like kind of the younger cast has a little bit of this biting, nefarious, like kind of sarcasm. I don't know. I think that I just identified what doesn't resonate or what is missing for me. And I think that I like this sketch because Sarah, and she wasn't even really doing that much. I don't know. I just really liked it. I like when she's dressed up as like a normal person. I always find that really funny. I heard her recently talking on Bowen's podcast about how she like can't deliver serious lines, and she was like joking, like, aren't we on a comedy show? Like what? Like it's not the craziest thing that I'm standing up there laughing. Like it's not like we're like doing brain surgery. But that was just like kind of what hit for me. And yeah, I liked it because I think it was relatively high concept, and I've been wanting that. And like you said, there wasn't like a big surprise, and like where they run away together. Like it was just very funny, and everyone was in on it. And I also was dying laughing at Shane keep continuing to call Keenan Your Honor, like that. I just thought was like such a nice touch and so simple, like not that intricate and not that just a simple concept, and it was just very funny to me.
Yeah, and you can have those little bits in the sketch that are throwaway lines that really do work for a sketch without building a new game to the sketch. So I feel like it didn't take away from anything. And I do want to shout out the writers of this sketch because it's a really unique trio that I see put together here, which is Michael Che, Pete Schultz, who does write for Update. So there is that connection between Pete and Che. And then Kara O'Sullivan, who typically writes with Jimmy Falley, who I didn't see any as part of the sketch credits this week. So I wonder if Jimmy was working on another project or was absent this week. But having O'Sullivan with Che and Schultz goes back to something that I think Punky once said to me, which is like Lorne or SNL really likes it sometimes when the writing teams like mix up just to, have some new comedy. And I think on a week like this, where you're coming off the 50th, you're looking for some fresh ideas and you're trying to not have a complete dud. after the big celebration. I think having a sketch put together with a unique writing team does help. So for me, really did like this one, and I want to send it over to a sketch that I felt like was the best of the night, put together by Carl Tart, rookie writer who we've all been really vouching for on the podcast here this season, for his writing and his potential, even maybe one day as a cast member. But let's talk about Dad's House, which was a dark sketch. And I think if there was any sketch that you're going to come out of this saying like best of the last 20 years or whatever, hyperbole, this is the one for me. Or we start off with a very innocent PBS Kids show promotion for Caillou, the college years, which heads over to Shane Gillis, who's supposed to be this guy who's talking to the camera, talking to the kids at home. And it is very, it's very like Eddie Murphy, Mr. Robinson-esque, as he's like at home, divorced dad with the kids, and he has the kids for the weekend, and he does not care. All he cares about is not giving his ex-wife too much money, as he explains the word of the day, where he says,
That brings us to the word of the day, alimony.
and then he feeds them some sausages as the only food that he has in the house.
I'll even let you shoot the juice. Oh!
And the kids are just distraught. I thought Andrew and Sarah here as the kids were fantastic. And it just gets super sleazy, I think is the word that I would describe with. He's just like, you just can't help watching this sketch feeling like this guy is just a jerk and you cannot root for him. And I think that that is something that when we talked at the beginning of this podcast about Shane being different than the rest of the cast members, is that every cast member, no matter how much you feel they work on SNL or not, is a likable person for the most part. You know, everyone's pretty nice. You like them. It would be problematic, or at least hard, for our cast members to be in sketches and convince you at home, if you really love SNL, not to like the character that they're playing. But Shane, as a edgy performer, I think can convince you that this guy is just a schmuck. And it really, really works in this sketch, to the point where, of course, he has puppet Bridget over there that he doesn't want to meet the kids when he talks to his ex-wife Trish and Sean Hedges on the phone. There's a great bit back and forth there. And Haskell, I just feel like this is the type of dark SNL humor that we should get more of. I think we got a little bit of it with Chappelle earlier in the year, and I rooted for that when we got that fire evacuation sketch. And this was the one for me that I was like, this is sometimes why I watch the show, because we get these hidden gems. I love this one. How did you feel about it?
I'm right there with you. I loved it. There was very much, to me, a feel like late 2000s, early 2010s SNL. To me, it feels like a premise that would have happened around that time. And you really hit the nail on the head, though. Like, this is something that we should see more of SNL. I like the idea when we see something that should be really bright and lively and fun be brought down by something kind of dark. And it really, really works. And Gillis, this was probably, I think, Gillis's best sketch of the night in terms of really getting a little bit of more character work in than just maybe doing Shane Gillis, although it very much is his brand of humor, especially like that line of like, I'll let you shoot the juice. Like that's really funny. I thought the idea of having his hookup be a puppet or a Muppet was fantastic. Like, that was hilarious. The interplay between them was great. The idea of like, you really liked me last night and what I did, and the response being, yeah, but I don't want that type of person around my kids. Like, that's great. And that really shows to like, there's this self-awareness to the sleaziness of like Shane Gillis's character, and that understands he's kind of a sleazy single dad, but the fact that he's recognizing it kind of plays into it. And then the last thing for me on the sketch is just James Austin Johnson playing like a very specific SNL character, or even a very specific like comedy character. Like, you knew exactly the type of character that the ex-wife's new boyfriend had to be. And I thought he just nailed it in a very, like, doing a lot with a very, very limited amount of time in that sketch.
I agree with all your points. I just like, I'm thinking in my head about like who the last cast member was that could play unlikable really well. And this is a great question for our community. So if anybody in the live chat has like a couple of ideas of former cast members that could do this, I would be very grateful to include that in the show tonight. So Amanda, what did you think of Dad's House?
I also really liked it. You guys gave a very comprehensive overview and thoughts. I thought it was really funny. I honestly feel like I forgot about it towards the end of the night. So to be clear, I don't want to swap the later sketch with this. I think that this was well placed and a really good sketch. And I'm glad that as many people saw it as did, because it was pre-update. Sorry, my dog is like not happy right now to be locked in this room. She's trying really hard to escape. Yeah, I honestly, I really liked it. It was great for Shane Gillis. I still feel like it was kind of, endearing is not the right word, but maybe there's something wrong with me, because I don't really feel like I was like that off-putting for him. Like it was like I saw the character, I saw where it was going, and I thought that he like actually did a very good job with it. I'm trying to think of like other hosts that I think could do it. I don't know. But yes, I really liked it.
I do think Chappelle could do this really well. I also think there was, in a weird way, it reminded me of a sketch that I really loved, which was a Jane Lynch sketch back in 2010, where it was the new boyfriend talk show, and Andy Samberg was playing a kid who was interviewing the man that Jane Lynch, his mom, slept with the night before, and starts talking about all the men that he interviews like on as they come down the stairs for breakfast, and like all the celebrities that have been there that have slept with his mom. And I do think like that sketch is like for sure a sleeper, like underrated sketch from back in the day that did remind me of like, oh yeah, Jane Lynch is the type of person that she could play unlikable. And that's why I do think SNL, sometimes brings in these hosts that aren't the most likable outside the show for a lot of people, because they can do these things on camera. Gabby, what did you think of Dad's House?
I hate to bring the vibe down, but it wasn't my favorite of the night. Like, I don't know, maybe it was a bit too, maybe mean is not the word, but abrasive, I'll say. There were definitely parts that I liked. Like, I think it is a funny premise, and I loved the fact that they decided to like put this as a children's show. I will say I completely forgot that it was supposed to be a children's show until the puppet came out, and I thought that that was a pretty funny way of doing that. Like, oh, by the way, this is for kids, in case you forgot in the past like 2 minutes of just watching these sad children eat or not eat sausages. But yeah, I thought that like there were elements of it that I liked, and I do agree that I think that Shane kind of, I don't know, he blended really well. This looked like it was right up his alley. Again, as someone who doesn't really follow him, it did look like he performed it well, but just overall, it just wasn't totally doing it for me. And that's, it's fine. There's different sketches for different people. But I also am curious about the Caillou the college years. I just find it hilarious that they just showed Caillou like hitting a bong, and then it's never addressed again. Like it's not even like a up next or something like that at the end. Like I just thought that was, yeah, I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, you mentioned the Muppet. Obviously, that to me was really interesting. I had this I don't know if any of you listen to the Hot Take Show, but I had this big question on Saturday of like, if he was really talking to the Muppet, or he was talking to the person that was holding the puppet, like the puppeteer. But there
That's
is,
pretty good.
yeah. So, but there was, I thought that there was a lot of good things I really did like about this, and I want to shout out Dan in the chat, who completely nailed who I was sort of like lost in my mind, but I didn't think about. Beck Bennett is somebody who could play unlikable really well, and we probably haven't had that person on the cast since he left after season 46, where he could just play like a complete asshole, like a boss that nobody likes, or a divorced dad that again, like in this sort of type of role that is just like so sad and sleazy. And I that's why I really like this. I used to love and vouch for Beck in his time at the show, so this is a great one, Dan, so thank you for that. All right, let's do some rapid fire for anything else from the episode that we want to make sure we cover that we have not touched on yet. So Haskell, anything else on your list that you want to mention from this episode?
Yeah, one sec, let me just want to make sure my wife is fully asleep. Okay. I am fully in love with Tate McRae. She's fantastic. And all I want to say was I was so worried she was going to fall off those chairs. That was just looked like I know it was like a stage and they were all put together, but that didn't stop me from being completely worried that she was going to fall off those chairs, and I'm really happy that she didn't, and she pulled that off.
See, I totally thought you were going to say that you were hoping your wife is asleep because you are also going to Dr. Bashar potentially to take out 2 ribs. So not, as long as it's not that, you can say whatever you want. All right, Amanda, what about you? Anything else on rapid fire from the night?
I'll touch on that doctor. I did not love that sketch. However, I thought that Emil was excellent in it. And I like to, it didn't go the way that I thought it was going to go. I actually wasn't really sure where it was going. Not obsessed with the premise. I know it's like a Marilyn Manson kind of reference, which is kind of niche, I guess. But I thought that Emil was very good. And yeah, shout out to Emil for anchoring a sketch, even if it was the 5-1, if you will. I also love Tate McRae. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead about Tate McRae. Yeah, sorry.
Well, I'm going to pivot to Tate McRae. So if it's anything about Emil, then you should.
All right. So I was going to say, yeah, I feel like it's not a Marilyn Manson thing. I feel like it's like every teenage guy has this conversation with his friends type of thing.
And you don't think because of Marilyn Manson?
No, I think if Marilyn Manson never existed, guys would still wonder what it was like to do this.
But would they talk about removing their ribs?
Oh, well, maybe just like from the practical standpoint of like, how else would you do this? Like, how else would you go? As he said,
beef to teeth.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know, because I grew up knowing that rumor or not rumor about Marilyn Manson. So I don't really know how to evaluate it objectively. And I just want to say that I also love Tate McRae. I don't really know her music that well. I'm going to look. This made me want to listen to the album, but she is a really good dancer and a really interesting performer in the year of our Lord 2025. So
yes, shout out to my Canadian friend Tate McRae. Gabby, what about you? Anything else on your rapid fire list that you want to bring up?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Jane quickly, but before I do that, I did enjoy the doctor's visit sketch, and I just wanted to put out there that it just felt like an exercise in like wordsmithing, and I feel like I can picture the writers' room as they were just coming up with like beef to teeth and all of the different ways of saying that, and I thought that was pretty funny. But on Jane, another song from her, I enjoyed this one. I think that there should be more like philosophical questions debated and discussed on SNL. But yeah, I just thought that it was full of little fun one-liners, like when she's asking Colin if the 5 people on the track are good or not. I thought that was a funny thing. The little quip about feeding the beautiful girl, foods like carrots and lettuce to keep her safe. I thought that was pretty funny. It really just painted a picture, and yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was good from Jane. I mean, this is something that we talked about on the Hot Take Show, just about how like this was one of the first things that she ever got viral on TikTok that she brought in from years before the show, and it was good and it hit. It's just like at what point are we going to see something else from Jane on the show to prove that she can really hack it on the show? And again, like I'm glad that she's getting this. I'm glad that clearly that they trust her. They put her in the promo this week. They gave her time on Update to do her thing. So I think they're just trying to instill confidence in Jane. But I do believe in these last 7 episodes, we're going to have to see a little bit more of her extending herself into something that she's less comfortable with to be able to see what she could do on the show. So happy for her she got it on, but it is definitely something that we'll continue to monitor as we evaluate the rest of season 50. For me, I thought that I want to shout out a couple of things that I thought were really good. Number one, as I mentioned Ashley Padilla before, I just want to say, like, with Chloe Fineman not being in the building, this was definitely an opportunity for another woman on the cast to step up. I think Heidi did a really great job. She was in 4 sketches and crushed all of her roles. And she had that one at the beginning of the night that we didn't talk about with the Under the Orchard Tree, with all of the photos. But for me, it was all of the things that Ashley did throughout the night, whether it was the look that she gave to Andrew Dismukes' character in that sketch where, Heidi basically says,
"Hey, but your parents are kind of ugly."
And there's a moment that I cannot put onto the podcast because it's a visual moment, but just the slow turn that she makes to look at Andrew of like, I cannot believe this person is dating my son. And it was very, after watching the episode over again, it was very Kristen Wiig-esque to me. And I think traditionally you would think that Kristen is known for these big recurring characters where she takes over the entire scene and the whole room is staring at Kristen. But Kristen was known for being like a phenomenal actress before she even got to get together with Paula Pell and write like big characters. She always did like the little things really well. And I think that people who didn't love the Kristen recurring characters always loved the subtle things that Kristen could do in a scene. And that is what Ashley really reminds me of here. And that's super high praise for somebody who's just a rookie. But I'm very curious to see the trajectory of her. If she continues to do these things well, I think she's going to be on the show for a very long time. So what is that next level for her? Will she sort of, fall into the SNL machine and start doing these characters because she comes from the Groundlings background? Or will it just be as an amazing supporting player, which she has the potential to do? So that's something that I'm watching out for sure. But, let's talk about the MVP from the night. So we ask you every Monday night to vote for the MVP from the previous episode. Could be the host, musical guest, any cast member. And I would love to know from all of you who you think the top 3 vote getters are. And if you want to vote in this poll, it's up on our social platforms every Monday at the SNL Network on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram. You can always vote and we'll tally your results to put in the show here. So Haskell, how do you think the listeners voted? Who's the top 3 from December 13th?
I think Gillis is going to end up being number 1. I think Sarah Sherman's on there. I was really torn between Dismukes and Ashley Padilla, but I'm going to go with Ashley. I think she had a really kind of, even if it was subtle, everything that you just talked about, I think she had a really good night.
Amanda, what about you? Who do you think the top 3 vote getters were for week number 13?
Let's do Gillis. Sherman, Bowen Yang.
All right. Gabby, let's get your top 3.
I went with Ashley as number 1 because I agreed with everything that you just said, John. Like that, there's something about that look. I just found it so phenomenal and hilarious, and I cannot wait to see more from her. And then after that, Heidi, because she was in a lot of sketches this week, and I think just very solid performance overall. And Sarah would be my 3rd.
All good picks. Well, here are the votes for and the results for episode 13 MVP. And the listeners were listening because they put Ashley Padilla as the MVP for week number 13. I mean, not only was she great in that look, but she also, playing the ex-wife in Dad's House, playing the maid of honor in Wedding Interruption. I think she did some really great stuff here and people are rooting for her. So get on the Ashley train before it's too late. Be one of those first people to come on in and support her. So there you go. 29% said that Ashley is the MVP for week number 13. Heidi Gardner next, 24% of the vote. So people really liked her. She was in the most sketches for the night and clearly took over. Like I said, without Chloe being there, I think that, even more stuff for Heidi. And she had that starring sketch at the beginning of the night that I thought was pretty good. Shane Gillis does come in 3rd place here with 17% of the vote. So he is in the top vote getters for the night. Emil Joachim had his starring sketch towards the end of the night, 12% of the vote, and 4th place. And then Mike Myers is the 5th place vote getter for playing Elon Musk. And I'm sure some people supporting him in his, Canada's not for sale t-shirt towards the end of the night that we got in the good night. So great to see Mike Myers back at the show. Top 5 for week number 13, Ashley Padilla, Heidi Gardner, Shane Gillis, Emil Joachim, and Mike Myers. All right, let's turn our attention to week number 14. We have one more episode left in this run, and that is somebody doing double duty for the 2nd time. You may have most recently seen her at the homecoming concert during the 50th, performing with The Lonely Island and by herself, but it is Lady Gaga who's coming back doing double duty once again. She did this in season 39, episode 6, November of 2013. So it has been a very long time, 11 and a half years since we've seen Lady Gaga do SNL as a host. She has done cameos. She has done musical, when she's been a musical guest, appeared in sketches. So certainly familiar with the format. Haskell, I'd be so curious from you. How do you feel about the return of Lady Gaga to host the show this weekend?
I'm excited. I think, she's clearly somebody who's, she's a performer, through and through. So I think she's going to be game to do a lot of kind of off the wall stuff. And I'm excited seeing her at the homecoming concert It really actually made me miss. I forgot that we had Andy Samberg on the show kind of weekly to start this season. And it made me miss that. I am hoping, I'll cross my fingers, for a Samberg, Lady Gaga, SNL digital short. It doesn't have to be, those characters that they've played. But just something. I think that would be really fun to see. And maybe that would be a nice like finish to like, hey, Samberg came back for SNL 50. They did a couple new SNL digital shorts for SNL 50, and I'd be okay if that's the last one. But beyond that, I think we're getting an episode with a real performer, and that should bode pretty well.
Yeah, I'm excited because, like I said, double duty's never easy. And for somebody who is a musical guest and then hosts for the first time, you never know how they're going to do. But now that she's done it before as a host, I feel really excited for her potential. My favorite moment, I think, from the first time that she did host, I mean, obviously I loved her in, three-way with Justin and Andy, but that was from a different episode. But and also I think she was in What's That Name Celebrity Edition. Those are like two moments that I really, really enjoyed from her. But from her time hosting was one of the only starring sketches for John Milheiser, a one-season cast member, was her and him together at a fourth grade talent show, showing the kids, and you basically saw it from the perspective of the parents, teaching the kids the dance that they're supposed to be doing on stage. And it was really, really well done. So that's a sketch that if you could search out online before this episode, I definitely encourage you to do it. So yeah, Amanda, what are your expectations for this weekend?
I have big expectations for this weekend, John. Thank you so much for asking. Abracadabra is going to be absolutely insane. She's going to do that first, I would imagine. And then I don't know what her second song is going to. When does the album come out? Do you know? Is it this week?
I will look that up. You tell me what else you are thinking about it, and I'll tell you in a moment.
Okay, well, that's all I'm thinking about. No, it's going to be crazy. I mean, it's like kind of vintage Gaga. The music video is unbelievable. I'm really excited to see how they stage it at In8H. She's done a lot of acting since she was last on the show. I was like thinking about, she's gone like toe to toe with Adam Driver in like a recent film. Like she's just, I have no idea what you're going to get from Lady Gaga, but it's going to be good. It's going to be smart. There's going to be a lot of, maybe no cameos, but also maybe many cameos. The cast is going to be sorry, I forgot if we're allowed to curse. The cast is going to be so pumped this week. I think that everyone's going to be on their creative game, in their theatrical pocket, if you will. And I'm really excited. I kind of wish that I definitely wish that this was the first episode after the anniversary special, but I am really excited, and I guess maybe even more interested now that it's come off this Gillis episode. Just curious to see how it goes. But I'm seated. I am set.
Yeah, I'm excited for the potential because, by the way, her album does come out on Friday. So a very good point, Amanda. I'm excited for the potential of this one, Gabby, because, I did like Shane in the sketches. I just know that Shane is a really low energy performer. So you couldn't find two more different hosts for these two episodes where Lady Gaga is going to be more high energy. Like she might play some characters that are more subtle, but the fact that she's such a triple threat to me makes me excited for what could be like a really fun start to finish, exciting show on Saturday. So what are your expectations?
Yeah, I'm kind of expecting like a wide range from her. Like I feel that we can get the goofy to, a bit more serious. I'm also expecting to see a lot of Bowen next week, and I am stoked for that. Just curious how, what kind of things the writers are going to have her doing, or she'll, agree to do. But yeah, I do expect a very solid show and performance, both on the musical side and also in the sketches. I also do wonder if we're going to get, some sort of pre-tape with a vocal performance from her. I feel like that's probably pretty likely.
Yeah, it could be very fun. So I can't wait to cover that one all week long heading into the weekend. Before we get there, we do have our by the Numbers show here on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where Mike will be back to talk about all the stats and power rankings from this Shane Gillis episode of Saturday Night Live. The poll is up now on Patreon, patreon.com/the SNL Network, to vote on the sketch that you want us to discuss even further in our SNL sketch breakdown, to do some film analysis on. And we will have full coverage of this next episode all week long. And then we will have our feedback show the following week and some fun stuff as we head towards the end of the season and the final couple of runs. But this was an absolute blast getting to talk to the three of you about this episode. I know a lot of strong thoughts about Shane Gillis, him coming back to the show and the sketches, but I really appreciate everything that you guys said tonight as we tackle this one. So Haskell, thank you so much for joining us. Anything that you would like to plug to the listeners?
Thank you, John, and thank you to the listeners. Unlike John Cena, I will never turn heel. I'll love you guys forever. Andrew E. Haskell on social media. Got a lot of shows coming up around New England this spring. April 11th, I'll be at the legendary Nick's Comedy Stop. And I heard maybe, if we cross our fingers hard enough, my favorite Canadian might even be around to go to the show. And if Tate McRae can't make it, then I'll settle for another Canadian. So thank you guys again. Love to see you at a show soon.
Yeah, I can get you that back rub in person if I'm able to make it down, Haskell. So we'll see. I'll keep you posted. Amanda, thanks so much for joining us. Hopefully the dog is doing okay over there, but appreciate all your thoughts. Anything that you would like to say to the listeners?
No, she's just like being like, I don't know if you can see her. She's being so insanely dramatic. I don't know. Maybe she's thirsty. Sorry, she's never interrupted a podcast before. So, you know, we'll keep her. No, nothing to promote. I guess Lady Gaga's album. Listen to that on Friday. She needs me to promote it. So out here doing that.
I'm sure she appreciates that. And Gabby, same to you. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. Anything that you would like to plug to the listeners?
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. I'd like to plug something called the Saturday Night Network. It's a little podcast that I do every once in a while. Great hosts, great creator. But yeah, nothing else. Just always happy to be here. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, always happy to have you and great to catch up with you. Of course, if you missed any of our coverage of SNL's 50th anniversary, we went full throttle with this one, full hot take show, roundtable, by the numbers, lots of coverage of that huge special. And then we did red carpet interviews that are available now on our YouTube channel and on our podcast feed, where James Stevens and I were there before the 50th special to talk to a bunch of current cast members, former cast members, and hosts of the show to ask them their thoughts and what it meant to be at that show. So we put together and packaged it all for you in a nice little special that's available now on the channel. So if you want to go check that one out, you absolutely can. To never miss any of the shows we are doing over here, please subscribe to the podcast, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, search Saturday Night Network, and you can follow the podcast on social platforms at the SNL Network. I want to thank LateNighter.com for being our podcast partner for the show here tonight, Haskell, Amanda, and Gabby for their amazing thoughts, and what a great live chat we had here on a Monday night. Come hang out with us every Monday as we talk SNL all season long. So on behalf of everyone here at the Saturday Night Network, my name is Jon Schneider, and we will see you next time. Have a good one.